Welcome back to the show. So in Iraq, a rocket attack killed a U.S. contractor and wounded a U.S. service member as well as others, part of the allied coalition. And a lot of people are pointing the finger at Iran, which I think is no surprise. I think we kind of assumed that that is who would be blamed for the attack. But I want to go ahead and show you this clip. First of all, this is a little bit of a montage we put together to show you what exactly happened, some of the damage, and what the U.S. is saying about this attack in Iraq as of right now.
Volley of rockets fired at coalition forces in Erbil in northern Iraq that could prove to be the Biden administration's first real geostrategic test here in the Middle East. First, it was deadly. One civilian contractor losing his life in the attack. 6 others were wounded, including an American service member. We are working to find out how badly they were hurt. Well, now I want to show you the moment it happened. One of the rockets almost directly hitting a busy road. You can see the burst of sparks there and the smoke rising. Remember, this is just an ordinary street in a relatively peaceful part of Iraq. People driving around at 9:30 on a Monday night and a rocket crashing out of the night sky. And you can see the damage here as well. It gives you a sense of the impact that these rockets cause. So, who's behind it? Well, that is unclear. A Shia militant group with alleged links to Iran claiming responsibility, but it hasn't provided any proof of that.
So here's just some imagery of for you guys to see where the, in the daylight, what the attack looked like. Now here's Jen Psaki. She's going to tell us what the administration says.
If you have an update on that, whether Biden will consider...
We're still working through attribution with our Iraqi partners to determine precise attribution for this attack. Obviously, that's a priority. I will convey that we are outraged by last night's rocket attack in the Iraqi Kurdistan region. Initial reports indicate that the attacks killed 1 civilian contractor and injured several members of the coalition, including 1 American service member and several American contractors, and we offer our condolences to the loved ones of the civilian contractor killed.
Trying to reach out to those specific governors from those affected states, Governor Abbott and others.
Secretary Blinken has reached out to the Kurdistan Regional Government Prime Minister Barzani, and Secretary Austin is speaking with his counterpart to offer assistance with the investigation and to help hold accountable those responsible for this attack. But we have not determined attribution at this point.
One, whether you've made that determination as well, and 2, what kind of retaliation?
Well, as always, the President of the United States and the administration reserves the right to respond in the time and the manner of our choosing, but we'll wait for the attribution to be concluded first before we take any additional steps or obviously have any additional announcements. I will convey to you that obviously diplomacy is a priority with this administration and something that is front and center to our engagement with our global partners around the world. And certainly these calls are evidence of that, but that will always be a part of our strategy as well.
Well, they're always going to say that diplomacy is going to be their first response, but we will see what ends up happening here. But let me go ahead and show you this article. This is from the Jerusalem Post. They say here, Iraq rocket attack kills contractor, wounds U.S. service member. Says a rocket attack in Iraq, if that isn't a tongue twister, on Monday evening appeared to target both busy streets and a base where U.S. soldiers are located near the Erbil International Airport. So the Erbil region in Iraq is the Kurdistan region of Iraq. They have there's an autonomous Kurdistan region there, and that is where most of the U.S. service members had been moved during 2020 when Trump was kind of moving troops around and trying to bring troops home. He actually moved a lot of the other troops that were sort of all around, about a half a dozen different locations where these U.S. members were all around Iraq, were moved to this Kurdistan region of Iraq. Okay, but there's a lot of Iraqis that don't want us there. And if you remember when Iraq asked us to leave after the killing of General Soleimani, they said, we want you guys to go. And actually the government of Iraq voted and said, yes, we vote for the U.S. to leave. We don't want you here anymore. Thank you for your service. Thanks for your invasion of our country and hobbling it. And now we would like you to leave. But of course, we have not left Iraq. We're still there, and we're really now concentrated in this region. So we've got rocket attacks targeting the U.S. and other coalition members there because many Iraqis, like I said, want us to go. So let's go ahead and read more in this article. It says, over the last 2 years, dozens of rocket attacks have targeted areas where U.S. soldiers were located on facilities on bases in Iraq. These have been blamed on Kata'ib Hezbollah and other pro-Iranian militia groups, okay? The U.S.-led coalition said that initial reports that indirect fire landed on coalition forces in Erbil tonight. There was 1 civilian contractor killed, 5 civilian contractors injured, and 1 U.S. service member injured. More information to follow. These would be the first U.S. casualties since March of 2020. The killing of a U.S. contractor at K1 near Kirkuk in December of 2019 led to rising tensions with Iran, U.S. airstrikes, an attack on the U.S. embassy, and the U.S. killing of Quds Force head Qasem Soleimani. Disputed reports say that the rocket fire may have come from, sorry, guys, I am just going to end up not doing a great job pronouncing these names. Okay. In the Nineveh Plains, which is controlled by pro-Iranian militias who serve under the command of the Popular Mobilization Forces, which are part of the government security forces. Other sources said the rockets came from near Kirkuk region, another area where pro-Iranian groups have had a footprint since pushing Kurdish Peshmerga out in October of 2017. Okay. So throughout this article, what we're hearing is the same phrase over and over again, right? Pro-Iran militia groups. So we have pro-Iranian militias. We have they've said this a number of times: pro-Iranian militias, pro-Iranian groups. They said pro-Iranian militia groups. So in this article, that's what they're saying. Now, a pro-Iranian militia group, according to all of the news outlets, has taken responsibility for this rocket attack. They said that they still have to double check it, to make sure that these people aren't just covering for Iran, because maybe these rocket strikes actually came from Iran itself. And now this other group that's inside of Iraq says, no, it was us. And, we don't. And of course, the powers that be in the military industrial complex would love for these rocket attacks to come from Iran itself, so that they have a reason to go after Iran much more intensely. But here's the thing. The term pro-Iran militia is extremely misleading, because what these groups are Iraqis. These are Iraqi citizens. These are Iraqi groups. They're Iraqis who just don't align with the United States. They're not Western-backed Iraqis. They're instead Iraqis that would like the United States to leave. They want coalition forces out of Iraq, and they tend to side with and like Iran more than they like Westerners. Kind of understandably so, considering Iran is their neighbor. So they actually side more with their neighbor, and they want more better relations with their neighbor than they want with the West and U.S.-backed coalition forces. So when they say pro-Iran forces, pro-Iran militia groups, you have to remember they're saying pro-Iran, but they're not saying Iranian. It was the Iranians. Same thing when they say terms like Iran-backed militia groups, Iranian-backed groups, right? Those groups, what they really mean when they say that is groups that are, in fact, Iraqis, but that just happen to sympathize more with and side with Iran more than Western forces. So that is something really to, whenever assessing these stories, keep that always in mind. They use this propaganda when they say pro-Iran or Iranian-backed. They use that propaganda in order to get us all on board and in line with wanting to wage war or continue the sanctions on Iran or continue these hostilities with Iran. This is just a phrasing of propaganda, when really what they could have said with this entire article was it was Iraqis who don't want us there. Iraqi citizens who have formed militia groups who want the United States to leave. So Iraqi rebels. They couldn't, and are they really? They're just rebels against us, right? So those words matter. People always say words matter. Well, in this way, words do matter, because what they're doing is they are brainwashing us or kind of grooming us into this feeling that, okay, this was all Iran. Iran has attacked us. And in reality, it's Iraqis that want us to leave, and they're defending their country, and they're saying, get the hell out. This would be very similar to, just imagine a strange world where the United States is, a failed state, and we're occupied. We've been invaded and we're occupied. And let's say we've got I don't know, let's just pick the boogeyman that a lot of liberals love, Russia. Let's say Russia has come into the country and they've now invaded us and they've taken over and they've built up military bases all around and they've installed their own government. You know, they put Donald Trump back in office, right? Because he was the Putin puppet. So they put Trump in there and they've got all the Trump cronies all in the White House and they've got this, you know, Putin-backed government going on in there. And there's a bunch of us that, let's say, are aligned with Canada, or, you know, or Mexico, even better, Mexico, because I feel like the Mexicans would have a little bit more, no offense to the Canadians, but, you know, the Mexicans just seem like to me like they would have some grit, you know, they want to fight a little bit. The Canadians seem like they just want to make some peace. So anyway, so let's say the Mexicans are on our side, those of us that don't want Russia to invade our country and take over. And there's a lot that love it. Let's say all the Republicans, right? We're going to go with the Democrat narrative right now. All the Republicans, they're loving the Putin government. They're loving the Russia invasion. They think they're great. But there's a bunch of us that think it's you know, we don't really want them here. They're from another part of the world. We want them to stay on their side. And we've got Mexicans helping us out. You know, we've turned down to the southern border and we've said, hey, we need some help here because we need to take our country back and we don't want these people here. And the Mexicans and the Mexican government say, yeah, we're here for you. We're going to give you guys some, you know, we're supporting you in some way, or maybe we'll arm you or help you out or train you or whatever it might be. Or maybe we just give you a thumbs up and say, you know what, go get them. Whatever that might be, whatever that Mexican-backed, you know, those us Mexican-backed militias, whatever it might be, whatever that means. And if we then go and do stuff to the Russians to get them out of our country, and they would say, oh, it was these Mexicans that did it, when really it's Americans who maybe have the support and the sympathy of the Mexicans who are trying to get the Russians out. So imagine that. I'm just trying to paint this in a picture that helps us absorb it a little bit better. Sometimes it's easiest when looking at stories to, you know, what I always like to do is I try to change out the players. And I say, how would I feel about it if it were different players? And would it, you know, am I just being emotional about a story because I hate, let's say, Iran, or I hate Trump or Pelosi? And I try to switch out the characters in order to get a better idea of what is actually going on and what the reality of the situation is. But the reality of the situation is that the United States and Westerners don't belong in Iraq. And Iran is their neighbor. So, of course, there's a bunch of Iraqis who don't identify with anybody from the West. They don't feel like we have a shared culture. They don't really want us hanging around. And they do identify with the Iranians much more so. And so they want the Westerners out of their country. And so they have turned to any help they could get, be it Iran or other forces, to say, help us defend our country against these foreigners and get them out. And that is what's going on there. So don't be misled by the terms Iran-backed or Iran-led or, you know, Iran, pro-Iran or whatever. That stuff is just, these are Iraqis, and they are, they're wanting the U.S. gone, and they're going to continue to do this kind of stuff until we do withdraw from the region. That is what we can expect to continue. Unfortunately, we've got a lot of warmongers in our government on both sides of the aisle. And, you know, I saw Mike Pompeo going on Fox News today saying we got to do something about Iran. You know, he's still trying to warmonger, even though he's out of office. And we've got a lot of warmongers that would love to see more escalating tensions, would love to see us continue aggressions and actually increase our military footprint in the Middle East and surround Iran even more so. And that seems like it would only be more antagonizing of these groups of people who want us gone and who are ramping up these attacks. So that is what's going. Now, it very well could be that Iran is helping them coordinate and that they are having military coordinations with them, training, backing them with weapons and whatnot. Just like I said, if it was the U.S. and we were trying to get the Russians out and Mexico was helping us out, maybe Mexico was giving us some arms. Maybe Mexico's giving us some training and some, you know, money. But nonetheless, it's still Americans that are fighting and trying to get their country back. And that is what's going on in Iraq. Hopefully that clarified some things for you.